Welcome back. So, today we will discuss about the skeleton system and what are the aspects related to the skeleton system pertaining to human body. Now, as such, a skeleton system is what we have bones in our body. As such, grossly we are talking about our bone system. So, this skeleton system is giving framework to our body. So, basically our whole body, the particular frame kind of structure, everything is comprises of bones and few cartilage. So, basically what we will discuss here in a skeletal system. So, we will discuss skeletal system. A skeletal system, we will discuss about the skeleton. And this skeleton is nothing but comprises of bone and cartilage. Now, this bone and cartilage are the one that is giving very specifically attachment to muscles. So, the muscle, the whole body muscle system, the tissues and other thing all are having some or other way connection with the bones. So, bones are very important in order to give the proper framework to the human body. Now, think about the importance of this structure. Suppose if your hand do not have any bone, absolutely there is no chance that you can do any kind of movement. So, or even I am talking here because of this jaw movement, and this jaw is full of this bony structure in the head region. So, these bones are very important, and this bony structure is giving movement as well as the flexibility to the human body when they are associating or doing synchronized action with muscle cell. So, basically bones are giving proper shape as well as articulation of the muscular system. Now, cartilage is another very important structure. These are not bone, but we will see the difference between bones and cartilage in a few while for now. Now, one simple example I will tell you, this is bone, the hand, this is bone, but this is cartilage. So, this cartilage is little flexible in this one is also a cartilage, but this flexible area is what we call cartilage, and the tough portion, the hard area is what we call bones. So, bones and cartilage are entirely different. Now, the whole skeleton system, the skeletal system of the human body is divided into two parts. Mainly there are two principal components of this skeleton system. So, let us see that what is there in the skeleton system. So, this whole skeleton system is divided into two principal components, and one principal component is called axial skeleton. Axial skeletal system, and the second is called appendicular skeletal system. So, the whole axial and appendicular system in human body is comprises of in total 206 bones. So, axial is what we have head. So, this whole area, if you see nicely, this is nicely connected, this head is nicely connected with this backbone, and this backbone is nicely communicated with this rib area, right. So, what you have in axial skeleton system is nothing but a starting axis, that is we have this skull. So, we can call it, this is skull. A skull is continuing into this the whole backbone, we call it vertebral column. So, this backbone we can simply say backbone or vertebral column. So, we have vertebral column, backbone, then we have this rib cage, right. So, we have this the whole ribs is part of this axial system, And then we have in the middle, we have a communication which is called sternum. So, we have sternum. So, this whole 4 structure is what is there in this axial system. So, we have skull, the complete bone, then we have complete vertebral column, then we have ribs, and then we have sternum. So, this vertebral column, sternum, rib and skull is what you call axial. So, if you separate this one out, you are left with only 2 structures, and these are this 2 hands and 2 legs. So, these 2 hands and legs we call appendicular. So, simply these are legs and hands bone. So, in animals, suppose animals are lying like this, right. So, this is in these 2 forearms, we called it forearms because they are in the front. So, they are called forearms, while the back side is called hind limb. So, forelimb and hind limb. So, these are either we can say it like that, the hands are called forelimbs, and this is called hind limbs. So, the forelimb and hind limb is nothing but the hand and the leg system in human body respectively. So, these 2 are what we are calling appendicular system because they are appendages. These are the one which we are trying to communicate with the external environment. So, they are kind of appendicular structure which we are using to walk down, which we are using to touch the structure outside and all. So, these are in grossly the skeleton system. So, we have 206 bones differentiated between axial and appendicular skeleton system, and this skeleton bones are either skull bone, backbone, ribs, sternum, and here we have legs and hands, the forelimb and hind limbs here. So, let us see why these bones are unique and how these bones are different than cartilage. So, let us see the bone. So, what we will do, we will make 2 columns, and in both columns we will compare the structures here. So, we have bone, and in one side we have cartilage. The first thing which I discussed, that the whole feeling about the bone and cartilage. So, these are very hard. So, simply we can call they are very hard, while these are very pliable, very soft in nature. So, one can nicely see that this is very soft while this is very hard. So, this is bone and this is cartilage, one example of cartilage, right. So, we have the normal appearance, the hardness and the pliable. Now, next thing, these bones are hard because they are made up of calcium salt. So, they are made up of calcium salts, particularly calcium phosphate. So, they have calcium phosphate, while these are made up of chondroitin salt. So, the chondroitin salts is the one that is making the cartilage structure, while the calcium salt, particularly calcium phosphate, is the one which is making the bone hard. So, these are the 2 unique aspects about this bony structure, the hardness, the pliability and all. So, that is differentiating. The other important aspect about this system which we need to understand is regarding their internal aspect. So, suppose if you have this bone, suppose we draw this bone. So, this bone is having a hollow cavity inside. So, this cavity is inside. Suppose this is long bone, I am just giving an example of this bone suppose. So, if you take the section, again we are taking a longitudinal section. So, if you take a longitudinal section, we will see that there is a cavity inside, and this is called marrow. We called it simply bone marrow. So, bone marrow is an area where the actual RBC formation takes place. The red blood cell formation takes place here in bone marrow. That is why these bone marrows are very important area in this long bone. So, this bone marrow is present in bone, while that is absent in case of cartilage. So, there is a simple explanation whether the cartilage will be able to form RBC. The answer is no, because they do not have bone marrow. So, bone marrow is an important structure present in bone and responsible for formation of red blood cell. While the both are connective tissue, as I said, they are very specialized connective tissue because they are giving connection to the muscles and all. So, this is one such structure. The bone marrow is present in bone and then other is absent in cartilage. Next, they have, now if we start looking into the structure inside, if we take the section, if we start looking into the microscope, that why these are very uniquely aligned and why they are very hard and all, you will find a cell, very specific cell that is making the bone. So, those cells which are making the bone is called osteocyte, osteocytes, while the bone, the cells which are making the cartilage are very unique. They are called chondrocyte, chondrocyte. So, chondrocytes are nothing but the cell that makes cartilage, while osteocytes are the cell that make bone. So, these are chondrocytes and osteocytes, the cell associated with the formation of these structures. Now, if the cell is there, then definitely there will be a specific protein associated with these two structures. So, bone is having a higher percentage of a very specific protein called ossin, while in here we have chondrine. So, these are nothing but the protein part. The chondrine is the protein part of the cartilage, while ossin is the protein part of bone, while they are having very specifically differentiated into these two. Now, apart from this, we have a very unique structure. So, I will just create some space, I will delete the upper 2 points. So, in bone, once we are seeing the cross section, thus apart from cells, these cells are nicely arranged in a concentric canal like structure, concentric ring like structure. So, they are very uniquely arranged in case of bones. So, this constant arrangement of the cell in those canal like structure is called Haversian system. Haversian system. Now, this Haversian system is absent in case of cartilage. So, there is no concentric arrangement of the cell in case of cartilage, while in case of bones you have a very specialized kind of system like constant arrangement of the cell. Now, this canal is very important, those are called as Walkman's canal, Walkman's canal, Walkman canals. Now, this Walkman canals is also present in bones, while it is absent in case of cartilage. Now, in gross, what we are discussing here, that they are very unique structures, very concentric arrangement of this cells osteocyte in the canal like structure. The system is called Haversian system and the canal is called Walkman's canal, and these structures are absent in case of cartilage. Now, these we have just discussed that these are some of the basic difference between bone and cartilage. Now, the bones, let us delete some more part and see the actual examples of this bones and cartilage. So, the bones are typically, there are two kinds of bone. One is called compact bone and spongy bone. While in case of cartilage, we have three different kind of cartilage. One is called hyaline cartilage, fibrocartilage and elastic cartilage. So, we have three kinds of cartilage and we have two distinct kind of bones. Now, we will simply see that example how these are different. If we take this long bone, so the typical bone is what people are drawing like this. So, this is typically long bone, And if you see, this is a globular head, and then you have this long area, sometimes it is called shaft. So, this is axis, and what we discussed, that these are the marrow cavity. So, the marrow cavity is inside. Now, this top portion is what you call a spongy bone, because these are not compactly arranged, while the middle portion is very compact. They are very hard, they are very tough. So, they are called compact. Although the structure and architecture are same, but these are spongy in nature. That is why they are called as spongy area. So, these are spongy bones, while in the middle area these are very hard. So, they are called the compact area, the compact bone. So, this is just an example of compact and spongy bone here. Now, if we start looking into the cartilage, hyaline cartilage, fibrocartilage and elastic cartilage, I will just give you one example. This is not important here, but we will try to discuss it somewhere after our actual discussion of skeleton system. So, this hyaline cartilage, we have gone through this hyaline cartilage in our trachea. So, this tracheal ring is having this hyaline cartilage. So, this is the location of this cartilage. I am just giving an example, there are many other examples also. Fibrocartilage is one which is there in between two vertebrae. So, in the vertebra we have a joint called fibrous joint. So, the fibrous cartilage, the fibrocartilage is the one which is located in the vertebral column. And elastic cartilage is what we have here in the ear. So, these are very elastic. So, these are kind of elasticity giving structure in the human body. So, there are many examples. These are some one or two respective examples of the cartilage and the bone. Now, since we started with this bones and cartilage, there are many times people are very fascinated about asking something, which one is the biggest bone in the body. So, the biggest bone in the body is femur. Femur. So, the femur is the long bone in the leg. So, the top region, the long bone in the leg region is called femur. The first half of the leg is called femur. It is the longest bone in the human body. And then some obvious question is, what is the smallest bone? The smallest bone is located inside the ear. So, inside ear we have the middle ear. There is an area, very specific area, and where there is a in this middle area ear we have three bones. We will discuss this one again later when we will discuss about the skull system. But just to highlight here, because we are discussing about the bones and all. So, the biggest longest bone is femur, and the smallest bone is the one which is located in the middle ear, and that is called stapes. Stapes is the smallest bone in the body located in the middle ear region of the human body. Now, there is one more important thing here. Sometime this is important because we are talking about this movement and locomotion at the chapter itself. So, basically we need to understand about this kinetic ability of the human. So, movement, the science which deals with the study of movements, the dynamicity, is called kinesiology. Kinesiology. So, kinesiology is nothing but the science which deals with the kinetic aspect of the human body is called kinesiology. So, we will try to discuss it in detail later on, but this is just a terminology associated with this whole topic. So, I thought to give you an idea. So, now we will see about the human skeleton system, and in human skeleton system we will completely discussing about all aspect of the bony structure, the framework of human body. And as we discussed already, that we have an axial skeleton and then appendicular aspect of the skeleton, and these two are distinctly divided into various kind of bony structure. Now, let us start with axial skeleton system. And in axial skeleton system, let us see the skull, the complete skull region. So, if you see the skull, this is a hard bony covering, and in this whole bony covering we have all different kind of bones lying all around protecting the brain. So, brain is a vital organ which is there inside this skull cavity, and all these bones which are there around this cavity is protecting that very unique
and very sensitive organ, and that is brain. Second very important thing, if you visualize the whole skull region, this is the only movable part, rest everything is fixed. So the only movable part is your lower jaw. So basically this jaw is the only bony region that is moving, and this lower moving jaw is what you call mandible. So mandible is the only movable part in this skull region, rest everything is fixed. So there is no as such movement in this skull region. Now there are many bones, and we will go one by one to each bony structure and see that what are the specificity about this bony structure and how these bony structures are covering the entire skull region. Now as I said that mandible is only mobile bone in this skull region, let us go and see that what are the different bony structure which are there in the skull. Now before going to the actual diagrammatic representation which I have drawn in the form of a slide, we will try to understand each and every bony structure, and then we will come back again to see some of the minute details about those bony structures. So let us go and see what is there in this skull. So this is roughly the diagrammatic structure of the human skull. So if you see here in the front part, this region is kind of facing the forehead. So this is called frontal. So this is frontal bone, and this bony part is in the forehead region. Just in the back side of this frontal, you have another bone here which is called parietal. So parietal is another bone which is on the back of this frontal bone, and this parietal is continued in the back side with the help of another bone which is called occipital bone. Now this occipital bone, parietal bone and the frontal are the three bony framework which are forming the complete boundary of the skull. Now since this boundary is kind of firm, so just below the parietal we have another bone which is kind of forming the base of parietal bone, and this base of parietal bone is called temporal bone. So this temporal is just in the base of parietal. If we see the boundary of parietal and temporal, you have another bone here which is called sphenoid. So we do not have a space here, so I will just write in the small here. So we have sphenoid. So this sphenoid is another bone there in this area which is kind of forming the boundary. Then once we have covered this whole area, we have another nice orbital which harbors the eyeball. So this is an area which is kind of eye orbit. So we can simply call this is an eye orbit, and this eye orbit is nothing but the eyeball socket where the eyeballs are there. If you see closely, we have two bones here. There one smaller bone that is called lacrimal. So lacrimal bone is a bone that is giving base to the lacrimal gland, and that gland is what is producing tears. Just in the back side of this lacrimal, we have another small bone, and that bone is called ethmoid. So this ethmoid is another bone that is there in very close association with lacrimal, and that is in the internal aspect of that bony skull region. Now in the close proximity to the eye orbital in the back, you have another bone that is called zygomatic. So this zygomatic bone is in the back side of in the lateral side of your eye orbit. Then of course you have this what we call movable bone region. So, this is complete movable aspect. So, this is complete movable bone, and that is called mandible. So, this is mandible. So, this is mandible bone. Now, we have this upper jaw bone. Now, this is upper jaw bone, and this upper jaw bone is called maxilla. So, maxilla is what you have in the upper jaw region. Of course, we will see the nasal cavity or nasal bone in little while for a minute now. And this small U-shaped bone in the bottom is one such bone which is called hyoid. So, hyoid bone is such a bone which is kind of a floating bone. So, this is not associated with any joint and all. So, this is one such unique bone. This is that is devoid of any joints and all. Now, in the occipital bone, you have this small region which is called occipital condyle. So, this is called occipital condyle just in the bottom of occipital bone. Now, this occipital condyle is very important to give attachment to the vertebral column. So, both there are two occipital condyle in either side, which is giving kind of a very firm adherent or attachment to the vertebral column. Now, we have left with a very unique area here. If you see, this is nasal bone. So, this is a nasal bone area which is giving the boundary of the nostril. So, the whole skull region, if you divide the whole skull region, we can see that the whole skull region is divided into either cranial or facial. So, cranial bone is what you have: frontal, ethmoid, occipital, parietal, sphenoid and temporal. And in facial we have 14 bones, 2 nasal conchae which we will see now, 2 lacrimal bones, 1 mandible, 2 maxillae which is like maxilla upper jaw bone, 2 nasal bone, 2 palatine bone, we will see what is palatine bone, then 1 vomer and 2 zygomatic bones. So, we will see this the whole structure here. Now, if we see here, we have just left with some of the bones which are there in the nostril area. So, we will see some important aspect about the facial bone and how these nasal bones are divided into palatine bone, nasal bone, and then we have another aspect called nasal conchae, and then we have vomer bone. So, let us see and try to discuss here that how these nasal bones are involved in this one. So, suppose if you draw a nostril and then we have jaw. So, this is the area that is having an upper jaw. The floor of the upper jaw is what you call palatine bone. So, the palatine bone is nothing but the floor of the jaw, the upper jaw. The floor of the upper jaw is what you call palatine. And then you have the base of your nostril. So, this is the nostril. So, this is nasal bone. So, this is a nasal bone, and the base of the nasal bone. So, we are not going to discuss about much of the anatomical details about this one, but one should know what are the bones available in the skull region. So, you should not be confusing with all those different bony structure available. So, one should not confuse with the skull bone with the facial bone. So, facial bones are separate and the cranial bones are separate. Cranial is one which is giving protection to the brain, and the facial is the one which is giving the structure to the face. So, this one is called vomer. So, vomer is nothing but the base of the nasal area, the nasal cavity. So, we can simply call this one as nasal cavity, nasal cavity. Now, you have this area which is kind of lateral to this whole bony structure. So, this is the septum. This is an area which is giving a nasal septum kind of appearance. This is called nasal conchae. So, this is just the lateral wall of the nostril. So, you have palatine, which is kind of floor of the upper buccal, upper jaw region. Actually, one can say upper jaw region. The floor of the upper jaw is palatine. Just above the palatine, you have the base of your nasal cavity, which is called vomer. You have nasal bone, which is like the outer boundary of nasal cavity, and then the lateral wall is what we call nasal concave. So, these are all the part of nasal cavity as such. Now, since we are discussing this whole bony structure in the cranial as well as the facial aspect, so we have discussed some of the bones. So, in total we have, so let us delete this part, and what we have now is total of 8 cranial and 14 of facial. In total we have 22 bones in the skull region. So, total skull bone is what you have, 22 in number. Now, there is a very important aspect. There are 3 bones which are lying in the middle ear region. So, we have bones available in the ear region also. So, if we draw the structure of our ear, suppose this is our ear, and we have discussed this one in our cartilage section also. So, these are some of the elastic cartilage examples. So, these are very flexible cartilaginous structure. We have this ear canal. Now, this ear canal is going and kind of terminating in a point where you have a very delicate membrane, which is called tympanic membrane. Tympanic membrane. That tympanic membrane is a part of a internal side of the ear cavity. Now, this tympanic membrane is connected with a very delicate bony structure. Now, this bony structure is kind of a hammer shaped. This hammer shaped bony structure is connected to another anvil shaped structure. So, anvil shaped structure, and this anvil shaped structure is connected to a kind of stirrup shaped structure. So, what I am saying here, that you have 3 bones here lying very close to this tympanic membrane, which is the last end of this ear canal. Now, this ear canal, which is the last point terminating into tympanic membrane, is having a connection with 3 bony structure. These 3 bony structure collectively called as ear ossicles. Ear ossicles. Sometimes they are also called as auditory ossicles. So, ear ossicles or auditory ossicles are nothing but the bone in the middle ear. So, this is the reason we call middle ear. So, middle ear region are having middle ear region is having 3 bony structures. One is hammer shaped, other is anvil shaped, and the third one is having stirrup shaped. Now, hammer, because this is like a hammer, hammer head, and then you have this this one is having a flat base, and then you have the concave side. So, the side is concave, but the area, the touching surface is flat. So, that is why this is anvil shaped. And then you have the stirrup shaped. The stirrup shaped is nothing, but the stirrup is what you have in the horse rider. They are putting their leg, their foot in the in rider's foot. They have the specific location. They have a specific area where they can put the leg. So, this is a stirrup. So, the first one is called malleus, and the malleus is one which is having hammer shaped structure. Second is called incus, which is what you have the anvil shaped structure, and the last one is called stapes, which is the smallest bone in the body, and that is roughly stirrup shaped in shape wise. So, malleus, incus and stapes are the 3 bones available in the middle ear region. These are called as ear ossicles. Collectively they are called as ear ossicles. Sometimes they are also called as auditory ossicles. So, the shape wise, malleus is having hammer shaped, incus is having anvil shaped, and the stapes is having the stirrup shaped structure. So, these are the 3 bones and these are the 3 structures. Now, evolution of human beings is kind of always correlated with our developmental stages. So, we have evolved from our lower counterparts. So, we are kind of highly evolved organism, but we can look into and see that what are the changes available in what are the similarities available in the frog and also in some lower vertebrates. And now we can try to see that these lower animals are having certain sort of modifications, and this modification, this is one such area where the evolutionary aspect of humans are greatly discussed. So, ear ossicles are the bony structure which are greatly discussed or studied to understand the human evolutionary aspect. Now, if you try to go back and see that what are these modifications, these bones are, whether these bones are available in our ancestor or not? Yes, our ancestors do have this kind of bony structure, but they are not this kind of malleus, incus and stapes, but they have certain modifications, and those earlier bones are now modified into our 3 ear ossicles. So, now if we try to see that what are the bones modification. Now, these are maybe important for some competitive examination. Now, malleus is the modification of articulate bone, articulate. The incus is modification of quadrate, and the stapes is the modification of hyomandibular. Now, these are the 3 bony structure were present in our ancestor, got modified in due course of evolution, and now we have 3 bony structure, malleus, incus and stapes. But in our ancestor they were having articulate, quadrate and hyomandibular. So, these are the 3 ancestor bone, and the other 3 bones are what we have right now are evolution of those 3 bony structures.